Because let's face it, she's 12 years old. She may not be carrying a knife. I mean, my daughter's carrying a knife, but your daughter may not be. So how do we utilize this? It's simple. You do the exact same thing, except you take out the knife. My hand is going to be going on a straight line. She is going to use the same jabbing type motion that she did with the knife, and then she's going to follow up with that hammer fist to the head. Today we're going to be talking about why Filipino martial arts is probably one of the best things that you could train for self-defense, especially if you're a little bit smaller and not as strong. So if you talk to people today, the general consensus is that if you're going to be training in self-defense, you need to be training in things like Muay Thai, you need to be training in things like Jiu Jitsu, you need to be training in things like boxing. And while these things are great for building up certain attributes, they don't really work for certain people to be able to utilize to accurately and effectively defend themselves. Now, here's the problem with these types of systems when it comes to training for self-defense. If you're a guy like me and you're training to be a better fighter, you're training to defend yourself in the street, you already have certain things that are on your side. You have strength, you have size, you have that raw animalistic ability to be able to fight when it comes down to it. Now, the problem is that if you're somebody who's a little bit smaller, a little bit weaker, maybe a little bit younger, maybe more in the feminine category, doing these types of blunt impact fighting technique type systems, it's going to put you at a point of disadvantage. And here's why. If I'm sitting here trying to take advantage of somebody who's obviously a lot smaller, a lot weaker than I am, she's not going to be able to take the full brunt of what it is that I may be willing to do to take advantage of her. Now, for example, if I'm going to throw a punch as hard as I can, right? Utilizing all my strength, all my ability to throw this punch, she's not going to be able to sit here and engage with this. She's not going to be able to block this punch and then follow up with a jab cross and then a round kick. It's just not going to work. Through the eyes of jiu-jitsu, if I were to take her down and forcefully hold her, I guarantee you there's not a whole lot of technique that's going to be able to save her in this type of situation. And when it comes to defending yourself, you have to remember that I could have the worst intent imaginable. So every second that's wasted taking these shots or trying to wrestle up off the ground is going to put her at a very, very bad spot. Now, one of the reasons why I bring Filipino martial arts, and more specifically from my point of view, pekiti-tirsia, into this type of scenario is because right off the bat, you're learning how to fight back against somebody who's wielding a weapon. You're learning how to fight back against somebody who could be bigger, could be stronger, could be faster than you. And you're having to utilize movement to be able to keep this range and keep this distance, come in when you're ready to strike, and then get right back out again so they're not able to overpower you. So before we get into the drills that build these types of attributes, one of the things that I want to talk about real quick right off the bat is if we're in this type of situation right here, where there's a little bit of distance, there's a little bit of range in between us, and I'm coming in with a full power shot, a full-fledged, and I'm trying to hit her. The intent is there, and she's able to get away and keep herself safe. We're already starting off at a really good point. All right, so I can hear the critics now. What happens if I'm not walking around carrying a sword? How does this relate to actual self-defense where I may not have a weapon with me? And I'm glad that you asked that. Hold on, bear with me, keep watching the video because that is the exact point that we're going to address throughout. The first drills that we're going to showcase is just going to be a basic Contra drill. Now, mind you, I'm not going to go deep within the drill and I'm not going to really tell you how to do it from start to finish. When I'm doing this Contra drill, the Contra is meant for being able to take out the weapon wielding hand. When we're in this position right here, this weapon that's in my hand is the one that really threatens her. This is the one that she has to worry about when it comes to full-on damage. So she's able to alleviate this, then it puts her at a spot to be able to finish the fight and get away. So from here, we just start off with just a really basic 1 and 2 angle. From here on the 2, she's going to do a broken strike, which is going to cause me to go to that angle 1, and then I'm going to swing. She's going to step out of range of this weapon. And if you notice, we'll go on to this side as well. Go to that 2. You notice she sidesteps. So sidestep and then freeze. Sidestep and then freeze. You notice that once she's here, this weapon is no longer an issue for her. As I'm swinging through, she's making contact and she's taking out that weapon wielding hand. How would this translate into an empty-handed type scenario? If I'm here and I'm going to grab her, or I'm going to punch her, or whatever, I'm trying to make this contact in towards her, what she's going to do is she's going to step to the outside utilizing a hand defense, which in this case is still the angle 2. So from the inside is still the angle 2 strike with her forearm, stepping off to the side where she's out of the line of my strike, and then she's going to follow up with a strike of her own. Now from here, she could run away. So if we do this, she does that, she strikes, and then she keeps going. If for some reason she can't run away, she is fully able to follow up, go ahead and throw that elbow, that other elbow, there you go, and continue the fight for as long as necessary to where she could then get away. All right, slap, elbow. There you go.
So, bam.
Slap, elbow. There you go. What you just saw with me having the helmet on and everything like that was the empty-handed version of the Contra drill. What you saw before with the sticks, with the striking, translates directly into the empty hand. Now you notice she was never straight on line trying to fight me and box me and kick me and all that kind of stuff. She was constantly moving offline. She was constantly striking, but she was keeping the same range to where she was fighting essentially the safe fight. So what you just saw was another drill that we have that is working off of the reverse grip on the knife. I have the reverse grip, she has the reverse grip. From here, I'm going with the angle 1 slash. She's training her jab, but she's also training her footwork. What this does is from here, I'm coming with my angle 1. She throws the jab, she takes my hand, and then she follows up with the fatal thrust to the head. Again, how does this attribute to what we do empty hands? Because let's face it, she's 12 years old. She may not be carrying a knife. I mean, my daughter's carrying a knife, but your daughter may not be. So how do we utilize this? It's simple. You do the exact same thing, except you take out the knife. In the absence of a blade, my hands become the blade. Now the way we're going to work this is going to be the same thing. My hand is going to be going on a straight line. She is going to use the same jabbing type motion that she did with the knife, and then she's going to follow up with that hammer fist to the head. From there, if she has to, she can get away. If she's in an open spot, that's the best thing to do. If for some reason she has to follow up, she has that option too. We're not going to go real deep into that because we showed you that in the last section of the video. One of the things that is being showcased here is that this is going off of a straight line attack, meaning that this could be a punch, this could be a grab, this could be just me moving into her, and she's going off the line, and from there she's following up. There you go. Now let's move around a little bit. Nice. Good. Now, if you have to run away, I want you to showcase that. So if I'm here, there you go. Now run. There you go. Now let's face it, when it comes to reality, especially if you're training with somebody smaller, somebody close to you, my daughter, right? I don't want to teach her how to sit there and just go toe to toe with somebody and just duke it out. That's not going to end well for her, no matter how trained she is. So if you have the chance to run away, to get to safety, once this person is no longer a threat, that's exactly what you want to do. What you just saw is us going over just a little bit of an instruction over a very simple footwork drill. Now, footwork has everything to do with everything that is within Filipino martial arts. It is so important, as it is with other systems. But with Filipino martial arts, everything that we do begins, middles, and ends with the proper execution of footwork. Now, what we're doing here is very specific, and we're playing with footwork as it pertains to timing. Now, if I'm behind time, I have to compensate with my footwork. If I'm equal time with my adversary, I have to compensate again for being equal time. And if I'm ahead of time, I run the show and I can move anywhere I want. So the timing of the attack really dictates where I'm going to go and how I'm going to get there. So the first one that I want to go over is just being a simple behind timing. With this behind timing, I have to compensate by creating more space between me and my opponent. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to move back at a left 45, and I'm waving my body back because they could be striking. And then from here, I'm going to turn the timing into my favor, and I'm going to shoot back in with a 45. Now, when it comes to equal timing, I don't necessarily have to move back because I saw the attack coming. I just didn't attack before it got to me. So from here, I'm just going to move laterally at a 90 degree. So from here, I'm going side, right? And I'm bringing my feet together. I'll explain why here in just a second. And then from here, I'm going right 45. Now, the last one is going to be ahead of timing, which means that I saw this coming from a mile away, and before my adversary had the chance to throw their intent, to throw their strike, I was able to dictate exactly where we were going to go. And what that means is from here, I'm going to go left 45 towards my adversary, moving to the flank. I'm going left 45, again, bringing the feet together, and then right 45. Why am I bringing the feet together? Does that not tear off my base? Does that not make me unstable? I've heard these questions before. Now, keep in mind, the points of which we bring our feet together, whether it's reverse, right, or it's 90, or if it's left 45, is just a transition in time. When it comes to footwork, I have to be able to fully use the full spectrum of my agility, which means that I should be able to go forward, backwards. I should be able to change directions at the drop of a hat. The only way that I can do this with the utmost amount of efficiency is to bring my feet together. Once my feet are together, I can move straight. I can move to the side. I could move back if I need to. Whereas if my feet are really wide apart and I have to make a sudden change of direction, it's going to be a lot harder, and I'm not going to get the amount of range that I would need. Now, if I'm in a situation where I'm not as strong as my opponent, or I'm not as fast as my opponent, or maybe they're a lot bigger, maybe I'm a lot younger, I have to be able to outmatch my opponent with my footwork. Now, one of the things that I've heard from my Tuhan, and he heard from his grand Tuhan, was that you and I could be completely equal in skill, 100%. We strike the same way. We are able to manipulate our weapons flawlessly. However, if you are better at me in footwork than I am at you, you will be able to beat me every single time. That's how important this is. Because if I'm bigger, if I'm more intimidating, if I'm a lot stronger, but she has better footwork than I do, she's going to be able to execute her striking. She's going to be able to execute her counter offense flawlessly and be able to dictate where she goes from there. All right, so again, this is for the critics out there because I can hear it now, but I also understand it. What about sparring? What about how do you take what you've been doing and put it into a live type scenario? And this is 100%, this is very, very important. If you've been around a little bit, you realize that the drilling aspect of the training looks a lot different than what it does inside of the fight. And you see this in Muay Thai, you see this in Jiu Jitsu, you see this in every martial art that's out there. So how do you compensate for that with what you do? And it's very simple. We spar, and we spar a lot. We do this with a sense of control for safety, but also so we can pick up the lessons that we're trying to learn. Everything that we're doing, you have to validate it for yourself so you know you can utilize it if you really need to. So what I'm doing here is I'm putting the glove on because, again, this is meant to be constructive. This is so she can pick up these lessons that we're trying to learn, and she can execute them within the live type scenario. I'm wearing protection for my hand because essentially in this scenario, that's what she's going for. She's going for the weapon wielding hand because this is going to cause the most damage to her. So I'm putting on the protection. So as we're moving around, you notice that as soon as she hits that hand, the weapon's out. And there's where she can follow in with more of her other attacks to be able to alleviate the situation. One more point in this, and it's going to be coming back from the very first of the video. If we're in a scenario and we're fighting and she's able to handle herself against this kind of striking, there's not a single punch, there's not a single kick, and there's not a single grab that she's ever going to have to worry about.